And it was talking about how scientists have developed an AI system that's capable of reading our thoughts.
Scientists predict deceased loved ones can be uploaded to your computer by the end of the year. I'm Stephanie Keith.
And I am Tara Manjekovic, and we are unapologetically outspoken. Hey, everybody, welcome to Freedom Friday. So, a couple weeks ago, Stephanie and I did an episode on the relatively scary and concerning developments in AI technology. And even though this is Freedom Friday and not Weird Wednesday, we're talking about this today because this actually pertains to our freedom as Americans. And just like the never-ending well of information that we seem to dive into when we research for our climate episodes, there is no lack of crazy and articles coming out about the scary as fuck world of artificial intelligence as more and more scientists and researchers and tech developers who are like high up in the world of AI technology continue to warn about the dangers of advancing these systems. So earlier this week on Monday, it was announced that the godfather of AI, a British computer scientist and groundbreaking innovator in the field of AI, Gregory Hinton, left his position as vice president at Google so that he could speak out about the threats and risks of AI technology, especially now that Microsoft has started incorporating AI technology into their Bing search engine, and now Google's rushing to do the same. And a little background on Hinton, he is referred to as the godfather of AI because he was one of the first scientists to develop something called deep learning, which is a form of machine learning that trains computers to process data like the human brain does. And Hinton says that he now regrets his role in the development of this technology. Apparently, he sent out a tweet where he stated, quote, "I had to console myself with the normal excuse. If I hadn't done it, somebody else would have." He also stated that Google has acted responsibly, but he wanted to be able to talk openly about his concerns about the dangers of AI without worrying about how it would impact Google, and that's why he resigned. Hinton believes that the race between big tech companies to develop more powerful AI has the potential to spin out of control, which is something Stephanie and I have talked about before. And he said it's going to be difficult to, quote, prevent bad actors from using it for bad things. And one of the things that he's concerned about is the fact that AI can create false images, photos, and text to the point where the average person won't be able to know what's true and what's not real anymore. And that in the future, not only could AI potentially replace humans in the workplace, but it could also be used to create fully autonomous weapons. Hinton told the New York Times, quote, "The idea that this stuff could actually get smarter than people, a few people believed that, but most people thought it was way off. And I thought it was way off. I thought it was like 30 to 50 years or even longer away. Obviously, I no longer think that." And we've talked about how Elon Musk has been very outspoken about the dangers of AI, and he's been openly critical of Google for not taking these AI risks seriously. And he recently told Fox News, quote, "AI is perhaps more dangerous than, say, mismanaged aircraft design or production maintenance or bad car production, in the sense that it has the potential, however small one may regard the probability, but it is non-trivial, it has the potential of civilization destruction." And so you have a lot of like business owners and entrepreneurs right now who are using AI and they think that it's great because it enables them to handle all of the minutia of their businesses without having to do the busy work. But there's also this issue that Hinton is concerned about, which is replacing humans in the workforce. And one of the podcasts that I listen to all the time is Andy Frisella's Real AF podcast. And when this story broke on Monday, he was talking about the reality of the dangers of AI, like in length on his podcast. And I want to play a clip because, as always, I find his perspective to be fairly powerful. And I hope that this will resonate with some of our listeners because not only does it have to do with how AI technology is replacing humans, but it also has to do with how it's basically destroying our sense of purpose, or has the potential to do that. So this clip is a little long. It's just over 3 minutes, but I think it's totally worth hearing. So let's hear what Andy Frisella had to say.
But I'm going to tell you this. If you get your way and AI is this great thing, all of your friends, all of your family, all of everybody that you know is going to be dependent on the fucking government, because that's the play. The play is remove the human need for human capital, labor capital, okay? And then do it under the guise of, we're going to promote these people into more meaningful careers. They have zero intention of that. The main intention is to make everybody's job obsolete, make them dependent on the government. And they're selling it to you with this idea of some sort of bullshit utopia. Oh, you don't have to work because the computers do the work. And lazy people love that shit. Okay, but what you're failing to understand is that without a purpose, without a project, without a mission, most human beings are actually miserable. Okay, when do you feel the best? Do you feel the best when you're sitting on your couch bored as fuck? Or do you feel the best after you just mowed your lawn on a 100-degree hot day after you really didn't want to do it? Okay, humans feel good after they accomplish things that they set out to accomplish. And when you remove purpose from an entire, now you have a situation where if you have no purpose, what do these people have to resist anything for? They don't have any need to resist anything. They can be easily conquered. Okay, purpose is important, and they're doing everything they can to remove it. Pride is important in your country. They're doing everything they can to remove it. All right, so we need to really think about the implications. If we don't need human beings, how long is it before AI figures out that humans aren't needed? Okay, you've all seen the Terminator movies, and if you haven't, go fucking watch them. And if you think that's out of line or far-fetched, bro, they're putting this AI in military equipment right fucking now. It's already there. I'm just saying, like, we're talking about autonomous thought machines that can, and by the way, let's talk about this too. What about the pre-programmed bias that they write into these AI programs? Okay, so like they say, oh, like I saw this one guy, he's like, oh, I love Andy, but he's wrong on this AI shit. I've learned so much from AI. Really? Have you? What have you learned?
Learn what they wanted you to learn.
That's right. How do you know that it was actual truth? You're putting an abnormal amount of trust into a program that's written by people who are nefariously evil and have showed it over the last 3 years specifically. And you're saying, oh, well, I know they did some evil shit. You know, they locked down the country. They cost people their jobs. They censored people. They did all these un-American, unconstitutional things. But they're probably creating a very fair program. No. When you go in there and ask it biased questions, it's extremely biased to the progressive left agenda. That's for a reason. The goal here, this ties into it, has been and is now a global communism state. One world government where every human being is dependent on the government of their nation to survive. Meaning you're going to eat their food. You're going to drink their water. You're going to fucking eat their, or take their medicine. You're going to consume their information. This is total control. And you're giving it to them because you want to make a few dollars using AI.
So Stephanie, first of all, we talked about it being the Terminator like a couple weeks ago, so that made me laugh. But honestly, the shit that he's saying, it's scarily accurate, don't you think?
Yeah, he's giving me anxiety right now. You know, I heard someone the other day talking about it, and it like just clicked with me with like how insanely fast this is going to grow. So they were like, you know, let's say you're in a room with like 100 people and you're all, you know, sharing information and sharing ideas. You're going to learn like a little bit. And maybe if you're with those people every day for years, you're going to learn like quite a bit about them. He's like, imagine that, but you know every single thing that person knows within a millisecond. And it's everyone on the planet. Like that's the power of this. And that's how quickly it's growing. And I remember when the pandemic was like just starting and I was watching the news. My dad had it on at his house and they were talking about how COVID was in China. And I was thinking like, oh, like, thank God it's not here, you know, like, and then like 2 weeks later it was here and it was like, oh my, holy shit, like how to get here so quick. And now everyone has it now, you know what I mean? Yeah. And it's like, so the same thing with AI, I feel like no one's really paying attention to it until it's like too late. And
Right.
then everyone panics, and then it's like mass chaos and lockdowns and all kinds of crazy shit. So, it's a little scary. It is like the Terminator.
Yes. And then another thing that like a lot of people are not understanding in terms of how this relates to the job market is the World Economic Forum has publicly warned that over the next 5 years, between the widespread use of AI and their global transition to ESG standards, which, as a reminder for our listeners, stands for environmental, social, and governance standards, which is essentially communism, they're saying that over the next 5 years, there's going to be such drastic changes that it's going to result in the loss of 14 million jobs. And according to their, the World Economic Forum has this a document called the Future of Jobs Report 2020. And in this report, it states that approximately 23% of jobs are expected to change by 2027, with around 69 million new jobs being created, but 83 million jobs being eliminated. And this report surveyed 803 companies collectively that employ more than 11.3 million workers across like 27 different industries. And in the report, it states, quote, clerical or secretarial roles, including bank tellers, cashiers, ticket clerks, data entry clerks, postal service clerks, and administrative and executive secretaries will likely see the fastest decline in roles over the next 5 years relative to their size today, with roughly 26 million fewer jobs by 2027. And this report also concluded that nearly 75% of companies surveyed plan to adopt AI, big data, and cloud computing within the next 5 years. And around 50% of those firms believe it's going to create job growth, and 25% expect to see job losses. And then I also read back in the beginning of April, Goldman Sachs economists forecast that 2/3 of occupations across America, which is the equivalent of 300 million full-time jobs, could potentially be automated by AI. And so I'm sorry, but anything that's promoted by the World Economic Forum is like bad news in my book. And so as much as I like already thought AI was a bad thing, I don't trust this shit at all.
Well, and speaking of the World Economic Forum, like, do you really think it's a coincidence that 15-minute cities are popping up and the Fed Now CBDC program is starting all at the time where AI is like coming out into the world? Like, I feel like the whole thing was known by them and planned. And this is just part of the plan, because when everyone's jobs are wiped out, well, we've got the Fed Now program, so we'll give you money and we'll put you in a 15-minute city and take care of you. Like, it's just scary, like how much is playing out exactly like they told us. You
Right.
know, for years they've been planning this and no one paid attention, and now it's freaking playing out, and it's really scary. Speaking of scary, there's a whole other thing to worry about with AI, and that is this new scam that involves kidnapping. So, a mother in Arizona received one of the worst phone calls that you could ever receive as a mom. She heard her daughter's terrified voice, followed by a man telling her that he had her daughter and he was demanding $1 million, saying that if he didn't get it, he would pump her daughter full of drugs, have his way with her, and dump her in Mexico. And this woman's daughter was on a ski trip at the time with her father, and the mom stayed home with the younger daughter and assumed, you know, like on this ski trip that someone kidnapped her. And the mom could hear her daughter crying in the background and begging for help. And what she kept saying is, she's like, I know my daughter's voice, obviously, but she's like, I know her cry. And it was her cry. It was exactly how she cries. And she never once questioned that it wasn't actually her daughter. So when she told the man that she didn't have $1 million, like she had no idea how she could get him $1 million, he said that he would settle for $50,000 and he would pick her up in a white van, and that if she called the police or didn't have the exact amount, he would kill her and her daughter. So, as she's talking with this psychopath, her younger daughter and friend, who were there at the time, began making calls to the dad and the brother who were also on this ski trip. And it turned out her daughter was safe and sound. Her daughter was like in her room the whole time on the ski trip and had no idea what they were talking about. So it turns out that the people doing this were using AI technology to duplicate this girl's voice so that it actually was her voice, but not just her voice, like her tone, her cry, the way she talks, everything about it, her mom said was 100% like her daughter. So that's how accurate this technology is already. And apparently, all these AI voice programs need is about 3 to 5 seconds of someone's voice to be able to completely duplicate it. So once she, realizes this whole thing is a scam and she like has a moment to think, she gets on the phone with 911 and immediately they warned her. They're like, "Yep, this is a common scam going on." And according to Sybin Johnson, a special agent and FBI spokesperson in Chicago, in the United States, families lose an average of $11,000 in these fake kidnapping scams. Sorry, this is freaking scary because it's like, they can completely extort you. Like, what if she couldn't get a hold of her daughter? And
Right.
like, what do you do? And then, you give these people your money. Like, it's so crazy. And I can't imagine like what other scams people are going to start doing now that they have this AI technology that's cheap or free in some instances. And I think everyone just needs to kind of be on alert that this shit is possible and to be extra cautious and on like not falling for it.
Yeah, and here's something else that's scary, Stephanie. So I read an article that came out on Tuesday. It was in the Epic Times, and it was talking about how scientists have developed an AI system that's capable of reading our thoughts.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it basically measures human brain activity and converts it into text. So there was a study that was published this past Monday in the Journal of Nature Neuroscience where they used a transformer model, which I guess is a neural network that learns context and meaning. And it's described as similar to what powers OpenAI's GTP or GPT chat. And they're using it to decode people's thoughts. So there was an experiment that was done where people were listening to podcasts for a few hours. And while their brain activity was being recorded while they listened to these podcasts, and the researchers apparently trained the decoder on the recordings of their brain activity. And then they had those same people listen to a different podcast or think about telling a story, which I guess allowed the decoder to generate corresponding text by analyzing their brain activity. And the results show that the decoded word sequences captured were not only the meaning of the stimulus, but the exact words and phrases. And on top of that, this language decoding system is non-invasive and it doesn't require people to get surgical implants or anything like systems. I guess there's other systems that are currently in development to do this, but they require some kind of implant, and this one doesn't. So is this scary as fuck or what? Because supposedly these researchers are saying that, oh, the decoding can't be done without someone's permission or cooperation. And if someone just consciously resists being decoded by saying, like, think about animals or think about something different and try to block your thoughts, that it can prevent the decoder from reading their true thoughts. But that's
What?
bullshit. Right. And this article also pointed out that, this technology can clearly be used to like violate people's privacy. There was an interview in the MIT Technology Review back in March where a legal ethicist at Duke University named Nita Farahani warned that brain data collection can be used by governments for like evil and nefarious purposes. And in this interview, she stated, quote, an authoritarian government having access to it could try could use it to try to identify people who don't show political adherence, for example. That's a pretty quick and serious misuse of data. In the workplace, this tech can be used in the dehumanization of employees by forcing them to subject themselves to neurosurveillance. The problem comes if it's used as a mandatory tool and employers gather data to make decisions about hiring, firing, and promotions. They turn it into a kind of productivity score. Then I think it becomes really insidious and problematic because it undermines trust and can make the workplace dehumanizing. So I'm sorry, this shit can basically read your mind, is what they're saying.
Well, you know what? I kind of feel like this has already existed and we just don't know about it yet because of like how we always say, you'll be thinking about something and then you go on Facebook and you get an ad
Right.
for it. And
Mhm.
it's like maybe it's already happening and we don't even know it, but that's terrifying. And yeah, like look at all of the shady shit that like the FBI and the CIA are already doing. Just imagine with this. Like
Right.
it's terrifying. I don't like that. No one wants their thoughts read. Like this is bad. Okay. Well, this gets like really morbid, okay? So, a recent article I came across on TikTok that was originally posted on foxnews.com says that scientists predict deceased loved ones can be uploaded to your computer by the end of the year. Like, what? So the article states that, quote, a Silicon Valley computer scientist recently predicted that dead relatives could soon be recreated and uploaded onto digital devices using AI. And Dr. Pratik Desai, who founded multiple AI platforms, tweeted, start regularly recording your parents, elders, and loved ones. With enough transcript data, new voice synthesis, and video models, there's a 100% chance that they will live with you forever after leaving the physical body. This should even be possible by the end of the year. I'm sorry, what? Like, that's so freaking creepy. So Media Peanut Tech Blog CEO Victoria Mendoza, who has worked with AI for over a decade, said that she doesn't believe authentic human consciousness will be placed on digital devices in the near future. And I was like, wait a minute. So is she thinking like you can upload consciousness at some point?
Right.
Like that show. Did you ever see that show Upload on
No.
Prime Video? Well, that's basically what it is. You die, and like if you have enough money, you can be uploaded to like the cloud or whatever. It's like now it's really happening.
Oh my God.
So this is just like straight from the article. It said, while it may be possible to create an avatar resembling a deceased individual based on their videos, voice recordings, documents, and photos, I believe that consciousness is more than just a collection of data. So this is from that Victoria Mendoza. Our experiences, emotions, thoughts, and interactions shape our consciousness in the world. We cannot simplify the complex and dynamic process of consciousness into a set of algorithms and data points. Such a technology would also pose ethical concerns. Yeah, no shit. Like, who would own the rights to the digital consciousness of a deceased individual, and what would be the legal implications of using such avatars for commercial use? Okay, Victoria, I think there's like more ethical concerns
Yeah, just a
than
few.
legal implications. Like, this is morally like just wrong,
And
I feel like,
creepy.
and
It's
creepy.
creepy.
And yeah, like, are we playing God? Like, this is just, it's getting a little too far out of my comfort zone.
Yeah, it's disturbing. And so, like, obviously, we're talking about a lot of dark shit here. Just gonna lighten it up really quickly with a funny story that my best friend told me yesterday. And we've had her on the podcast before, Erin. And so, hi, Erin. But anyway, she and I lived in Washington State a few years ago. And we both like left during the communist COVID regime. And she ended up leaving some of her stuff there in storage. And now she wants to move some of her stuff. So she left me this message yesterday, and I just have to play it for everybody.
Hey, sweetheart. It's me, Aaron. Hey, I just had to tell you, the that crazy story about what happened with that AI situation. So I'll try to make it like a long story short, but basically, I was trying to find a cross country mover to bring out some stuff that I had in storage from Washington State out to Arkansas, where I moved. And so I was, going on to, the Google and just basically typing in like reputable cross country movers. And the highest rated was this one company. And of course, now that I'm saying all this, it's escaping my memory, but it was a real reputable company. And it was like American Freight Movers or something like that. And so, I sent in the request online for them to call me, and it was on Sunday. So I got back this like short little email, and it was like, "Oh yeah, someone will be contacting you." And I get this text message on my phone, and it's from a woman, and her name, a woman I assumed, but named Ashley. And it was just, she was very pleasant. We had a really nice like back and forth conversation. I was like, "Oh, thank you so much for contacting me." And she's like, "Yeah." And she's like, "It's my pleasure. I'm sorry that we're closed today, but I'll be happy to contact you tomorrow." And back and forth it went, very pleasant. And I was like, "Thank you so much for time." And she's like, "Oh yes, look forward to talking to you." So the next day comes, and it, I know it sounds corny, but it's like, I was like, "Oh, what a nice lady." So the next day comes, and I am you know waiting to hear from them. Well, I end up having to work late. And so I texted her, and I was like, "Hey Ash, I was like, I apologize, I got to work late. If you don't mind, could you hold off about an hour before you call?" And she was like, "Oh, no problem. That's not a problem at all. I look forward to talking to you, blah 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 blah." So an hour goes by, and the phone rings. I pick it up, and it's a man on the phone. And I'm like, "Oh, I'm sorry." I said, "Are you Ashley?" And the gentleman goes, "Oh no, Ashley is our automated AI system." Dude, I'm not kidding you. I got the biggest weebie jeebies. I was like, "What?" Like, I flat out was like looking forward to talking to Ashley, this nice lady. And I'm not going to lie to you, I was so thrown aback by it that I was like, "You know what? I'm sorry. I can't talk right now. I'll call back later." And I hung up because I just couldn't believe it. Like, it wasn't a yes and no. It wasn't a okay. It wasn't like it was a conversation with substance. And Ashley was answering my questions, answering the things I was saying. It I literally have the creeps even just now talking about it. It was something I have not experienced before. I always thought AI was, kind of like when you're on the phone and they're like, "I'm sorry, we do not understand what you're asking." No, this was a full on thinking conversation. And so,
Okay. So
Thanks,
sorry, that was a
Erin.
little long. But that would have creeped me out too.
Okay, so I did not even think about this until she's telling her story. That happened to me.
Really?
This was like way back during Christmas, and we were planning on taking the kids to Gaylord Palms, which they do like this they have like sledding and like an ice cave thingy, whatever. And I had to like switch a ticket. It was like this whole thing. So I'm calling them to try to talk to someone so that I could get this all sorted out before we get there. And so I'm talking to this woman that sounds like a woman, like totally like not computerized at all, like you and I are talking right now. She starts giving me like attitude because she wouldn't answer my question. And I was like, no, like she kept saying like, "Well, do you need to contact like the ski slope or whatever." And I was like, "No, like I called them. They told me to call you. They said someone at the front desk can like switch the ticket." And like she starts giving me attitude. She's like, "Well, did you talk to them?" Like literally like with an attitude. And I was getting like so pissed. And so finally like I hang up on her and I'm like, "Well, I'll just call back and get, someone else. So I call back and the same bitch answers. And then she keeps saying like the same thing every time. It would always land on, well, you need to call the ski, blah, blah, blah. And then finally it hit me and I was like, holy shit, is this a recording? Like, is this a automated voice? And like totally freaked me out. And I like couldn't decide. But then eventually, like, as I kept asking questions and then I just started like kind of like giving her attitude back, I was like, oh my God, like this is not a real person. But it sounded so real. And then I was like, she was giving me, the robot was giving me attitude. What the heck? So yeah, totally creepy. So creepy. Oh my gosh. I feel like we got catfished.
I know.
Okay. Well, this one's not as creepy, but it is pretty interesting. I guess it caught my attention because my daughter is like a very big fan of The Weeknd. And there's this AI generated song simulating Drake and The Weeknd's voices and their styles. And it went viral last week. And before it was removed from all of the major streaming platforms over copyright concerns, I did hear it and it was actually really good. Like you would have no idea that this was AI. And the song was called Heart on My Sleeve. And the whole story of this is kind of like explaining how are we going to handle copyright law because this is evolving so rapidly with advanced AI that like how do we address this when we don't have any laws on the books for it? So it turns out like artists cannot copyright their style under US law. So this is coming from an attorney that was talking to Fox News. And apparently, like this artificial intelligence was impersonating Drake and The Weeknd, but using different words. So as long as it wasn't copywriting the exact words of a song and it made up its own words, like they don't have a leg to stand on because yeah, it was using like their voice and their style, but there's no law that protects that, which is crazy.
Yeah.
So the attorney, Brian Rotella, he said, this comes as a surprise to many artists, but their style alone does not meet the requirements for copyright. And so as to copyright, it appears to not violate any rights as it was an original composition, not literally copying lyrics or music of the artist. The generating of their voices by AI, though, without the artist's consent, could be argued to violate what's called the right of publicity. This lets famous people essentially sue when their identity is commercially exploited. While these claims have been brought in the world of commercials using like lookalike actors and what seems to be identical famous voices, Drake would be a pioneer in bringing a suit against the AI and its developer. And like I said, I listened to it and it sounds just like Drake. And it was like good and like catchy. And there was some guy, the guy that like I guess used the AI, he had like a sheet over his head like a ghost and he called himself the ghost writer. And it was probably some like teenage kid just like having fun and like here the song went viral like immediately. So I just was wondering, like, is this going to be the end of famous artists? Because I think it's definitely going to cause a major disruption to the music industry. And if we don't have any laws on the books for it yet, like it'll be really interesting to see how this all plays out.
Yeah, and not even just the music industry. Like think of all of the I know you were saying earlier that like celebrities that they can sue for defamation.
For something about exploiting publicity.
Okay. What about like I mean any politician, any celebrity, you can basically put out a recording of something that, someone said and everyone's going to think that it's true. Put it out on
Right.
Twitter, put it out on Facebook, whatever, and it's people are going to think it's actually legitimate. And how do you argue that it's not?
Exactly. And like, how pissed would you be if you were Drake or The Weeknd and AI used your voice and made a better song than you did?
Right.
Oh,
Exactly.
man. Yeah.
But
Interesting world.
it is. It's a scary world. But let's try to end this on a hopeful note, I think. We'll see. But it seems that as much craziness as is going on in our government, at least some of our Congress people seem to have a bit of common sense, because there's a bipartisan bill that's being introduced by both Democrat and Republican Congress members that's designed to prevent the Pentagon from using AI to launch nuclear weapons without decisions being made by actual humans. And the fact that we even have to have a bill for this is disturbing.
Yeah, I'm like, was this not thought of earlier? Like,
well, according to Republican Representative Ken Buck from Colorado, he says that while the US military use of AI can be appropriate for enhancing national security purposes, using AI for deploying nuclear weapons without a human chain of command and control is reckless, dangerous, and should be prohibited. And so I guess there's kind of a policy in place right now, but they want this bill to like codify it and mandate that no federal funding can be used for the launch of any nuclear weapons by AI without humans deciding like which weapons are used, what the targets are going to be, and like the how, when, and where of nuclear weapons being implemented. And Democratic Representative Ted Lieu from California is one of the co-sponsors of this bill. And he said that AI should never be substituted for human judgment when it comes to launching nuclear weapons, which is just fucking common sense in my book. But according to this article that I read, and it was in the Epic Times, one of the reasons that this is so critical to actually have a bill is because ever since the Cold War, the United States has maintained second strike nuclear capabilities, and it's something called launch on warning status. So that means that we have the capability to launch nuclear weapons anytime there's a perceived nuclear aggressor. Like, let's say we detect incoming missiles, instead of waiting to see if it actually hits US soil, we can go ahead and launch our own attack. I'm sure with the Biden administration in charge, they would probably wait until half the fucking country was destroyed before acknowledging anything was actually happening. But this is something that apparently is part of what's, in our policies. So anyway, according to the Pentagon's, they did this 2022 China Power Report. And I guess China is also implementing a launch on warning protocol, and theirs is called early warning counterstrike. And what theirs does is if there's even a warning of a missile strike on China, this will result in China conducting a counterstrike before their enemy can actually even strike first. And apparently, China has been conducting exercises involving their launch on warning nuclear program since 2017. So this is like legitimately some scary shit, because as the article points out, if either China or the United States allows AI to make decisions about launching nuclear weapons, a false positive on either country's nuclear tracking system could easily escalate into like full-blown nuclear war. And this article was also discussing how nuclear war could be easily spurred by China's recent tech developments that enables them to interfere with our US satellite infrastructure and our missile systems. And since Biden basically let, Chinese spy balloons travel across our military bases for several days, before doing anything about it, it seems highly likely that China probably has very thorough information about all of our missile system capabilities. So, is this really a hopeful ending to this podcast? I guess that depends, because let's say even if we do require human intervention for our AI, that's not to say that China or Russia or any other country that wants to destroy the United States will do the same.
well, I was thinking that because I'm like, okay, if we put this bill in place, that does nothing because there's
Right.
all these other nuclear armed countries. And then I was thinking, like, why do we even need a bill? Like, this should be common sense. Who would actually think that's a good idea to like connect AI to nukes? But after the whole withdrawal with Afghanistan and leaving all the military equipment, like I would question their judgment. But what the this was not a hopeful ending, Tara. This left me feeling very frightened and very anxious. I think I need to take a Xanax and go to bed. Oh my gosh. Yeah, Terminator. The Terminator's here.
It's the Terminator and every other scary science fiction movie rolled into one. Like I
Yeah.
remember watching shit like this, what, 10 years ago and thinking, wow, like that's so crazy, but that would never happen. This is science fiction. We are now living in the age of science fiction, and it is frightening.
You want to know, you want your mind to be blown for a second?
Yeah.
I just found this out. The Terminator was a prequel to The Matrix.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, I think, unless this was like AI faking, but like the director like said, and like had this whole story plot, and then like the main character of the Matrix was supposed to be like Jesus reincarnated or something. It was like this whole thing, and I was just watching it and I was like, whoa, really? Like it was really interesting, but I mean, it could have been an AI fake or deep fake or whatever they call it. So
I'm gonna have to look that up now.
but yeah, it would be like the Terminator was like the machines that took over. And then that's why in the Matrix, everyone was hooked up to machines.
That would make sense.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Okay. I need a drink. This was heavy. All right, everyone. Well, you have a great weekend and go get yourself a drink because we all need it right now. My God. And we got to come up with something like really inspiring on Monday to give us some hope in humanity. All right. Well, everyone have a great weekend. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you back here on Monday. If you enjoyed this episode, share it with a friend, and don't forget to subscribe to the podcast so you get our latest episodes every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And if you could, please rate and review the show. We are going to be reading every single review, and I would love it if you hopped over to Instagram at Unapologetically Outspoken and say hi. We want to see who's out there and start a conversation, plus get all of the topics that you want us to talk about next. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.